So our keynote speaker for today is the Honorable Ambassador Rufus Gifford. He is Chief of Protocol of the United States and former U.S. Ambassador to Denmark, where he served from 2013 to 2017. During his tenure, Ambassador Gifford led several efforts to address the effects of climate change, build international coalitions, and invest in clean energy, just to name a few. As a result of his meritorious service, Ambassador Gifford was awarded the Grand Cross of the Order of Dannebrog by Her Majesty Queen Margrethe II of Denmark. Without further ado, it is my distinct honor and privilege to present Ambassador Gifford.
Thank you, LaDonna. Can you see and hear me, I hope?
Oh, yes, sir. We see you fine. Thank you.
Good. Well, I'm coming at you from the State Department in Washington today. So it's wonderful to be with all of you, and thank you so much for including me. And I'm thrilled to be participating in this World Protocol Matters 2022 virtual conference. So thank you so much for including me here. I know that the conference started as an idea from the organizers who were looking for ways to connect with other professionals and colleagues during the initial stages of this pandemic. And here we are 2 years later, and still, I think, obviously, we're not fully out of the pandemic yet, but also seeing these kind of conferences as a real tool to share stories, share experiences across borders, across the globe, right? Which is really the work of protocol generally. But I also know this is about, I think, sharing stories about how protocol, the different aspects of protocol, the different tenets of protocol. So it's the way I always like to say it is that we create the environment in which diplomacy can thrive. And how do we do that? It's through professionalism, it's through details, but it's also just through the basic tenets, sort of basic humanity, civility, kindness, diplomacy. Two words that I lean into with everything we do here are dignity and respect. And I think, frankly, we can't. We always have to be leading with those tenets. We always have to be putting concepts like civility, kindness, dignity, respect forward. It starts and ends with that. And I know when President Biden asked me to take this job, it was incredibly important for him to try to create this, as I say, create the environment in which diplomacy can thrive. That's real, and that is all about the human. That is all about the human connection. And honestly, I think this work has been harder during the pandemic, because as much as it's wonderful to see your faces on Zoom today, it would obviously be better to be in person. And the work of diplomacy is, in so many ways, I think, an in-person game most effectively done. We've all seen the benefits of handshakes, of sharing a glass of wine, or sharing a meal from our countries, or experiencing the food of another culture, which is such a beautiful way, I think, for humanity to come together and again do this incredibly important work of diplomacy. And of course, that is so much about what protocol is all about. Looking at the impressive list of speakers at this conference, I assure to provide perspectives on the practice of protocol, not just in government, but also in military, sports, academia. I think so often people think about protocol and they think about government, they think about heads of state and government, and that's real, and the military, of course, as well, and that's real. But also, I think protocol has a place in all of our lives, both in the private sector, but also in all of our lives. And I think in sharing a couple of stories, one from my previous service as ambassador, as LaDonna said, that I was ambassador to Denmark under the second term of the Obama administration from 2013 to 2017. And one of the most important, the work of protocol, which you didn't even necessarily know it was the work of protocol at the time. But the ability to bring people together, to convene a group of people over a dinner table around an idea of some sort, and create a beautiful environment, whether that's at a home or a restaurant, to have a degree of uh, have a degree of detail and structure to this event, but also have it feel warm, have it feel open, to facilitate discussion, to be able to do that. That is really where the magic of diplomacy lies. And that's what I loved. And we saw that firsthand. You saw over the course of a dinner, over the course of a meal, walls be broken down, conversation become richer. And that has so much to do, yes, with the people around the table, of course, but also with the environment in which you provide for that conversation to take place. And that's what we try to do every day. And that takes me to this job that I'm in today. And it was because of that work with the work that I did in Denmark. And people took note of it and understood sort of I really wanted to lean into the human side of diplomacy. And we did a lot of sort of unique sorts of things, which was so much grounded in the work of protocol that I wanted to bring to this job. And right now, we are at a critically important time in world history. There are crises around the globe. Just to give you an example of some of the work that we have been doing, I have to be Senate confirmed to take this job in this role. So it took me quite some time to actually get here during the Biden administration. But the work to bring allies together, say, as it relates to the crisis in Ukraine, as we have, the president and I and the administration went to Brussels and to Poland in March, and where you saw protocol on full display in both stops, because we were speaking at an EU meeting, and then we were participating at a NATO meeting and a G7 meeting. And to think about the work of protocol that has to go in to trying to bring all of these various countries together with competing interests, in some ways different interests, but try to bring everybody onto the same page. And I truly believe that the work of protocol is one very, very important tool that you can use to actually get folks on the same page here. And that's what we did. And that I think that, and if you look at the countries around the world, the West, but also the world, you've seen a true you've seen people coalesce around a certain set of ideas. We think that is a very, very good thing, despite so many different opinions, so many different political journeys that various countries are going on. And it really, really, really does matter. Just yesterday, I greeted the Italian Prime Minister when he landed at Andrews Air Force Base and introduced him to the President of the United States. Just this morning, I greeted the Sultan of Brunei as he landed at Andrews Air Force Base for what we call the U.S. ASEAN Summit, which we are hosting here in Washington, starting with a dinner at the White House tomorrow and Friday. In just a couple of weeks, we'll be heading to Los Angeles to greet a number of world leaders at what we call the Summit of the Americas. So both all the Western Hemisphere countries convening again to try to help solve some of the world's most pressing challenges. And it's our team that builds these events. It's our team that brings these people together and sets the stage again for successful diplomacy. I'm very, very proud and honored to be continuing to lean into this work. I'm still quite new in this job, but I learn every day, and I am actually truly, all of you are probably more adept protocol professionals than I am, even though I have the title. And truly, I am very honored to learn from the remarkable women and men who I am serving alongside in the protocol office here at the United States Department of State. So I've learned so much from protocol professionals as I could just in the 4 months since I've started this job, and I know I could learn so much more from all of you. So I know we're short on time here. I think I might have even already run over, but LaDonna, I'm very happy to answer a couple of questions. If people do have questions for me, I'm happy to stay on as long as I need to. But really, just in the end, I just appreciate everyone making time and taking time to participate in this conference, and I'm delighted to be a speaker here today.
Ambassador Gifford, thank you so much. Again, I'm telling everybody, oh, I'm typing messages. I'm so stoked. We have the ambassador here. And this just really means a lot to have someone, we know how busy you are, to join us here for this conference to really help all of us know from your position and from where you stand just how important protocol is. You talked about some of those key events and how you support and help bridge those gaps through with diplomacy, working with the president and helping him connect with some of our world leaders here. And I have a couple of questions, but one, I don't want to hog them all, but I will have one question that did come up is, you talk about going from being an ambassador to this job as a U.S. ambassador in protocol. What are some of the differences that you have experienced coming from the side of being an individual who protocol was afforded to now someone who is actually providing that service?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it is different, although I think because in many ways, well, we're always serving. I mean, in the U.S. government, we're also always serving the president, so or the Secretary of State. And when I was serving overseas, I definitely had that role as well. But I do see it from the other side now, meaning I see. You're right that I had protocol staff at our embassy that was really implementing the protocol policy, and now we are providing that for the president, the first lady, the vice president. So honestly, I think that it's more of a, it's hard to say because there's part of this job that's a behind the scenes role, but there's also part of it that's actually fair, and that's true, and it's an important part of the job. You're not the one in the photographs. You're not the one who's giving the speeches necessarily. But that's not always true as well. So you, in some ways, are the principal still. So similar to being an ambassador overseas, as I have been, you do become, even conferences like this, you do become, you do learn quickly that you have something to say. And so in addition to being kind of the behind the scenes staff voice, as it relates to your relationship and your work for the president, you also, I think, have a responsibility to the government to speak up about issues like this, to speak up about the value of human diplomacy, to speak up about the value of sort of that sometimes gets forgotten, especially in a virtual world where handshakes, eye contact, breaking bread, having dinner with someone. Those kinds of things, they just matter so much, and I think it's important for us to elevate that. And I do use my moments to speak out and remind people how much those elements of diplomacy matter.
Indeed, and we can all certainly relate to that. And I have one final question. I know there are just so many comments here, and so what we'll do is I'll collect those if we have any more questions, and I'll get with your staff to get some of those questions if they're very
Great.
specific to your role. But the final question that we have is from Ms. Jennifer Beckett, who is the Chief of Protocol for the Department of the Air Force. What has been your most memorable experience thus far as the Chief of Protocol?
It's such a wonderful question. And it's hard to just, it's hard to come up with just one. But I'll share a couple of quick stories. And I think that we all know, and a lot of you have been, so when we do meetings, say with the president and a foreign leader, the bilateral meetings are actually, they're usually quite scripted. People know what issues are going to be raised, and and that's there's a reason, there are good reasons for all of that. But one of the things that I've loved experiencing with President Biden in the few months since I've been in this job is I will introduce him to, say, a world leader. We had the Chancellor of Germany here in a couple of months ago, and they hadn't spent too much time yet. He's a newly elected chancellor, and the president says to me, I would, and this wasn't necessarily part of the scripted plan, but I want to spend some one-on-one time with the chancellor to get to know him, to understand, so that we can connect on a human level. And I love that, because ultimately that is so much about the work that we do. We create this because the policy becomes easier if the human connection is there. And that's the work that we do. So, and obviously it's, I don't want to Uh, I believe very much in my heart that when you have leaders, and we are part of this, and so much of it is the impression that we give for our countries as soon as we see these leaders at the airports and whatnot. But that human connection, that human bond, makes everything better and easier. And I've seen that firsthand, and I do think it's one of the reasons why, as I talk about the crisis in Ukraine, um, it's one of the reasons why I think countries have come together and spoken with one voice on this. And I'll say, on the human side, and this is certainly the work of protocol as well. I remember being in Warsaw in March with the president, and it's a rival ceremony at the palace in Warsaw with the president of Poland and President Biden. And it's I've seen many of these before, but it's so memorable to me because it's so emotional. And again, it's the work of protocol and it's the work of diplomacy. And you're standing there with your president, with the president of Poland and his protocol chief, and they start playing the Star Spangled Banner, our national anthem, in front of the presidential palace in a foreign country. And I remember getting emotional about it. I remember thinking that this is one why I am so thrilled and honored to have this job. And this to me is sort of the essence of diplomacy, that we can go to a foreign capital, standing next to a foreign leader. They're playing our Star Spangled. They're playing our national anthem. And this is what we need more of in the world, somehow. And those are a couple of quick stories that have meant a lot to me over the course of my time here.
Okay, Ambassador, my name is Patricia Kennedy Vine, and I'd like to ask a very quick question. First of all, thank you for sharing this special moment with us. It means a lot to us, and it means a lot to this industry. I'd like to know your thoughts around diversity and inclusion in the protocol profession, especially how we can help young people to come into this profession. Because if you look at the profession, it's difficult to see very young people who are interested in this industry, and we're trying to see how we change that. So what are your thoughts in how we can manage that?
Yes, well, wonderful. Thank you. And first of all, diversity, equity, and inclusion are critical to me personally. And I will speak as an American too. I think that we need a workforce that accurately reflects especially look, when we're the government, we need a workforce that accurately reflects the diversity of our country. I'm proud to say that the protocol office here in the U.S. is quite diverse. We are more than 50% women. The State Department and the government needs to do a better job across the board as it relates to racial and cultural diversity. But here in this office, we're actually doing quite well. But we still need to think about it. We still need to make sure that we are promoting folks at a rate that reflects our desire for a more diverse and equitable workforce. I think it's really important. I think a lot of people talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, Patricia, but I don't. It needs to be here, and I don't know. It needs to be in your heart. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to really believe it and really believe that a diverse workforce makes your product better. I think there's nothing more boring than sitting around a table with, 8 white men who look exactly like me, because typically we have very often we might have a similar opinion. It's much more interesting, and I think leads to a more effective workplace when you have a diversity of opinion, which I think very often stems from just basic diversity in the workforce. So it's very, very important to me generally as it relates to encouraging younger people to engage in this line of work. Look, this was an obsession of mine when I was ambassador to Denmark, and one of the tools we used I even had a TV show back then that was geared towards younger people, people under 35, to get them interested in this work of diplomacy. And we were quite successful, which was exciting. I think we saw, similar to what you're discussing, we saw issues with the fact that younger people didn't really care about the work of government. It felt sort of, it felt very sterile. And old-fashioned somehow, and not particularly modern. And there's some truth to that, let's be clear. But I really wanted to try to tear down walls and pull back the curtain and show young people just how interesting this work is. Our workforce here is actually quite young. We have a number of political appointees and as well as career civil servants. We have a mix of both in our office here, and in particular the political appointees, but also the civil servants come out of the political appointees are very often quite young, but even the civil servants, which is great, very often will come out of some sort of internship program inside the department. And this is a great place for folks to start, because it is fascinating work. It's a lot of travel. It's seeing the world. It's learning about other cultures. We provide folks, ability to take language, to learn a new language, or to learn about a new culture through various trainings provided by the U.S. State Department. So there's real opportunity here. It's about people understanding where that opportunity is.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, the Honorable Patricia Devine. Thank you for that question. Sir, we know that you have to depart, and we have other speakers. We hope that you are able to hear just a few of them, but we have a couple of more questions. And again, as I stated, I will be able to forward them to your office, and we do our best to work together and get those back to the protocol professionals here. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us and providing your insights, some really cool stories. And it's just good to know that at levels such as yours, that we all kind of experience some of the same challenges, but truly what you stated, it's we're talking about diversity, inclusion, getting young people in, and just supporting our principles. It's what's in our heart, and just working hard to ensure that our principles are relaying that message that of diplomacy. So any parting words, sir, before we sign you off? Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks, LaDonna. Thank you. Well, I appreciate all your words. Keep up the good work, everybody. It's even though a lot of our work is behind the scenes, people do appreciate it, and I appreciate you all very, very much. So thanks for everything you're doing, and look forward to keeping in touch with this organization. So whatever I can do for you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.